I originally didn't have plans to see The Flash in theaters. It looked like something I would probably want to check out when it came to streaming, but as the film got closer and closer to its release date, a morbid curiosity started to come over me. There were articles and appraisals coming out, all of which from other celebrities and industry people that claimed this was like one of the greatest superhero movies ever, and of course when it finally hit theaters, the reactions were pretty split. Online, you either absolutely hate this movie or you love this movie, with some elements finding common ground, but for the most part, the takes have been pretty divisive. Eventually, I couldn't contain my curiosity any longer and decided to see The Flash in theaters. I have just returned from seeing it at the time of recording this video. So, right away, I have to address the controversies surrounding the lead actor of the film. I think it is absolutely insane that someone who has done all of the things that Ezra Miller has done still has a career and gets to walk the red carpet and is still in talks to return to the role from what I hear. This is pretty disgusting and seems outlandish until you remember that this is Hollywood. If you do not wish to see the film because of the actions of Ezra Miller, I totally understand your decision. I'm only going to be looking at the film itself in this video and not the personal lives of the people that made it, but I still felt the need to address it. So, after finally having seen The Flash, it is a very bad movie. Right away, the biggest issue that I have with it is the characterization and performance of the main character. It's strange because I actually enjoyed both Ezra Miller's performance and the character of Barry Allen in the Zack Snyder cut of the Justice League. Barry never really bothered me in that film, but I do not understand what they're going for in this at all. Barry Allen is kind of insufferable as a lead character in this, both in his actions and the way that Miller delivers a lot of this dialogue. There are scenes that are meant to be emotional, but he reacts like he either doesn't care or treats it like a joke, and then the scenes that are meant to be funny are just awkward. Every line is either over-delivered or under-delivered. Also, there are two Barry Allens because this film deals with time travel and the multiverse, and the other Barry is supposed to be younger and more immature, but they portray him as actually stupid, and the performance just got on my nerves from both of them. Your movie is called The Flash, and the Flash himself is unbearable. One of the things that I've heard in the online discourse surrounding this movie is that they should have cast Grant Gustin in this role instead, having him reprise his role from the Flash television series. I have seen some clips of that series, but have never actually sat down and watched the show. But from how much I've heard about this actor, I do wonder if he would have done a better job than Miller. I should also bring up my personal knowledge of the Flash as a character. I'm a fan of how he's portrayed in the Justice League and Justice League animated series, and I love the Flashpoint Paradox animated film based on the comic series that I know this film took a huge amount of inspiration from, but I actually haven't read. I'm a fan of the character, but I'm not an expert in the character, is what I'm trying to get at. I also don't believe you have to be a diehard fan of a character to enjoy a film about them. It's up to the filmmakers to get people invested in the protagonist, even if they have never heard of the original material that the protagonist is adapted from, and I think The Flash fails to make me care about Barry Allen. Overall, there's just a massive tonal inconsistency that plagues this film. One minute it tries to be lighthearted and fun, but in the next it tries to have some heavy emotional moments, but it never succeeds in what it's trying to do for me. I was never invested in Barry's conflict because I've seen this story done before and better. I've also seen these two wildly different tones balanced better in other films. One of the biggest things advertised about this movie is the inclusion of Michael Keaton's Batman, reprising his role from the Tim Burton films. When The Flash was first announced, this was probably the thing that had me the most interested. I, for one, love the Burton movies because of how insanely weird they are. Keaton is my favorite live-action portrayal of Batman ever, primarily because of the confidence that he brings to the role. There's something about the way that he carries himself while in the suit, like he's been doing this for years and he's the most fully realized version of the hero. And Keaton does bring that in The Flash when he puts the suit on for about one pretty cool scene. There's a moment after he first suits up and we actually see him walk around in it and engage in combat that reminded me of just how good Keaton was in the costume. It's probably my favorite sequence in the movie. Unfortunately, outside of the costume, Keaton looks like he would rather be doing anything else. He doesn't seem like he wants to even be here, and as much as I liked the idea of seeing him again, I don't think he needed to be here at all. It's very clear that this movie was trying to capitalize on the multiverse idea popularized by these two Spider-Man films, specifically Spider-Man No Way Home, in which they brought back previous actors that played Spider-Man. I won't kid myself and say that the primary reason for the other Peter Parker actors being present in that film wasn't to capitalize on nostalgia, but they also had a good reason to be there, and they didn't show up until way late into the film. The other Peters existed in that story to help the main character grow. There was a connection they all shared in the alter ego of Spider-Man. What connection does Michael Keaton's Batman have to The Flash? There isn't one. Ben Affleck's Batman would have made more sense, and he is in the film for about 5 minutes, but they couldn't capitalize on nostalgic fan service for Affleck, so he's out and Keaton is in. And let's talk about fan service for a second. I believe it can be done well and can also be horribly pandering. I won't lie, my favorite sequence in The Flash is entirely fan service. I loved hearing Danny Elfman's score and seeing Michael Keaton kick some ass, but I will also acknowledge that I groaned when I heard Keaton say his "let's get nuts" line later in the film. It felt cheap and was staged in such a strange way, like it was meant to get a big cheer from the audience. My theater was completely silent at that moment, by the way. The pacing of this film is all over the place. Things they should spend more time on are given very little time, and the exact opposite is done for things I could care less about. An example of this is when the alternate version of Barry gets his Flash powers, and we have to sit through what is essentially an origin story, and it takes up way too much time. It's also played mostly for comedy that doesn't land for me. One of the elements that doesn't get explored nearly enough is actually one that I did like. Not only the character, but the performance. Sasha Calle portrays Supergirl and does a very good job in the role. There's an interesting story for this character as well, with her meant to be the guardian of her cousin Kal-El. She deals with having been locked away by the human race and having lost the one she was supposed to protect. There's something here that has so much potential, but they just don't focus on it enough. At first, she rejects the idea of helping Barry fight Zod because of how humanity treated her, but then just comes back, having changed her mind off camera after watching Zod kill some people. And then boom, we are immediately in the final act. Imagine if you had cut all the dumb physical comedy sequences of the other Barry doing stupid shit with his powers and used that time to explore Kara discovering for herself the good of humanity and why it's worth protecting. I would have loved to have seen that from this actress. Sasha Calle is really good in the emotional moments the film does give her. Unfortunately, however, in her biggest emotional scene, she is acting alongside a completely wasted Michael Shannon, reprising his role as Zod from Man of Steel. In Man of Steel, he killed it, I thought. And in The Flash, Michael Shannon is sleepwalking the entire time. There isn't one line delivery with any kind of emotion behind it at all. It's probably the worst performance in the film, and considering what Ezra Miller was doing for most of it, that's saying something. He's also barely in the movie. Sasha Calle, Michael Keaton, and Michael Shannon are all not given nearly enough screen time to really do anything with their characters, and that ultimately makes the final act really fall flat. The third act addresses the big message of the film, that going back in time to change things is wrong, and that some problems don't always have a solution. This is a decent message, but again, it's been done better before. The reason that the world is falling apart is because Barry decided to go back in time to prevent his mom from being killed, which resulted in his dad being falsely charged with her murder. Barry comes to realize that he can't stop this from happening because of the butterfly effect, so there's some actual character growth there when he has to make the choice to let her go. Barry learns that time traveling and messing with stuff is bad and you should never do it. Of course, that's before he does exactly that to get his dad out of prison just seconds after letting go of his mom. The entire movie, Barry is told not to screw with things and has seen the consequences, yet still chooses to alter evidence that gets his dad released from prison. But it's all okay, I guess, because the world is exactly the same, except Ben Affleck is replaced with George Clooney now. The end. I greatly dislike this ending. The story offered nothing new and was almost entirely predictable beat for beat, save for one really dumb decision toward the end. None of the more interesting characters are given enough time. Barry Allen is an annoying and frustrating protagonist. This could have been done so much better, but I ultimately have no desire to ever watch this again. Before I go, I need to talk about the CGI in this movie. I chose to talk about this last because I know there are people saying that this movie is getting hate primarily because of its CG. Well, I just talked about why I didn't like it without even mentioning the CGI, so there you go. A movie can have shitty effects and still be good. Bad CG in a bad movie is just icing on the cake. The absolutely atrocious visual effects that are shown in The Flash are kind of unbelievable. Video game cutscene level quality. When CG takes you out of the experience, that is not good. This movie is especially getting hated on for a particularly terrible moment toward the end where they show off their big quote-unquote cameos from across the multiverse. Some of which are actors that are deceased, and it made me feel very uncomfortable. Christopher Reeve looked awful, and the worst is probably George Reeves, the Superman from the 1940s. If you do some research on that actor, his addition in this scene feels particularly distasteful. Also, Nicolas Cage's unfilmed version of Superman makes an appearance, and it, of course, looks horrible. It's also just a weird thing to have in the movie. This is based on the proposed Tim Burton Superman film that was going to be written by Kevin Smith. If you go on YouTube and watch Kevin Smith talk about his interactions with the producer of the canceled film, you'd be doing yourself a huge favor. It's a very funny story that's told perfectly by Smith. I bring this up because this is something I don't think the average person would know about. So most people would probably be confused by the appearance of a CGI Nicolas Cage in a Superman costume. It's very weird and bad. This movie is weird and bad. I did not like it. It's embarrassing that they would release this so close to Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Like, everything this film does badly, that film does infinitely better. Go watch that instead. If you've seen The Flash, let me know what you thought down below in the comments. I understand that some of you may disagree with me, but I'd still love to hear your points about why you do. I'm just giving my opinion like I always do, and I encourage you to do the same. Go check out my videos on Spider-Man if you're interested in what I have to think of other superhero stuff. I've actually talked about superheroes a lot lately on the channel. I'll probably move on from them for a minute and do something different in the next video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.